So Adam Brooks, the right-wing commentator, has attacked the Green Party for being apparently pro-terrorism. Now, before I show you this video, I have to say that Adam Brooks is genuinely one of the stupidest men in politics. Like, genuinely. Like, he goes on GB News a lot, and he often uses very emotional arguments. He doesn't really delve into analysis very well. He just moans a lot, which is, to be fair, kind of the modus operandi of the right wing. But anyway, he's attacked the Green Party on a proposed motion about reducing the amount of days terror suspects can be kept in prison. And this is what he had to say.
If there was a UK political party that I would suspect would stick up for potential terrorists, I would have had money on this mob. The Green Party are extremists. They're far left nutters, in my opinion. And everything that they do underscores that for me. Now, Zach Polanski is a strange man. But why would the Greens want the police to have less time to question potential terrorist suspects? You'd want, for our safety, you'd want the police to have as much time as possible. Terrorists kill people. We've seen that in Manchester. Kids blown up at concerts. We've seen it on London Bridge and in London. Why would you not want the police to have as long as possible to question those suspects? I'm sorry. If you vote for the Green Party, you are voting for legalised drug use. You are voting for men in women's toilets. Total economic destruction. And now you're voting for terrorist suspects to have more rights and less time in police custody. I am shocked.
I mean, first of all, you're not shocked. You are a right-wing person who hates the Green Party and you disagree with their policy. Well, you go further than that. You call them nutters, hard left extremists. He also nearly said, well, you want to give more rights to terrorists, and then stopped himself and said, well, actually, you want terrorists spending less time in jail. Anyway, by the way, it's really obvious he can read from a teleprompter. Now, given that he's had experience on TV quite a lot, I thought he'd be better at presenting that, but he was so clearly reading the script, which, he probably wrote himself. Anyway, the point is, he misses out so much context, and his point is so unbelievably stupid, which I'm obviously going to go through now. So what is the context of this? It used to be the law that terror suspects could be kept for 4 days by the police. And then Tony Blair extended it from 4 days to 14 days, to 2 weeks. In which pretty much the entire Conservative Party voted against that, by the way. The Conservatives, I disagree on 99% of issues. In that particular issue, they're right. You don't want government interference, or you don't want state overreach. Now, does this mean that the Greens are supporting terrorists and it's dangerous? No, because notice what Brooks says and notice what the bill means. It means terror suspects. That's an operative key word, suspects. The problem with this is the government can deem anyone it wants as a terror suspect. Now, for all of Adam Brooks, who goes on TV and says, this government is an authoritarian communist regime, yeah, the pro-privatization, pro-capital, pro-billionaire party is communist, right, is now arguing in favor of state overreach, because it is not good for the powers of the police and the state to hold someone for up to 2 weeks with zero evidence. And that's the point. The idea isn't to give more rights to terrorists. The idea or the point is to say any random person should not be locked up for 2 weeks with zero evidence that they've done anything wrong. That's the point. But Adam Brooks is arguing in favor of that. And again, when he says that this government is like authoritarian communist, he's like, actually, I quite like the authoritarian side. Now, Adam Brooks has really, I think, terrible political views. He's right-wing, but I would hate for the government to lock him up for 2 weeks because the government deems his views terrorist and extreme. And I bet you, if Adam Brooks was to be arrested and kept in jail for 2 weeks on the grounds of terrorism, he wouldn't be very happy about that, would he? Now, of course, if you're held for 4 days and you're released, that means there was no evidence against you that you've done anything wrong. Does that mean you have less time to question whether someone is a terrorist? No, because if there's new evidence that comes to light that this person's done something wrong or is a terrorist, they'll bring them back in. And by the way, do you really think that the police who release potential terror suspects are just going to completely ignore them. They're probably going to keep a watch on them. And that's another conversation about state overreach in that regard. But obviously, if you release someone after a couple of days and they think, oh, are they a terrorist? They're going to keep an eye on them. But the point is to protect any random people for being locked up with no evidence. We literally, over the last year, a year and a half, have seen old grannies, right? No offense to them all, but people holding up signs saying they oppose genocide peacefully, and they've been arrested, right? I don't like the idea that the state can lock up grannies for 2 weeks with no evidence that they've committed a crime because they're deemed a terrorist suspect. I don't like the fact that climate change activists could be locked up for 2 weeks because the government decides that actually climate change or climate change activists are now terrorists. You know, Margaret Thatcher once deemed Nelson Mandela a terrorist. And that's the problem, because the term terrorism and the label is so far-reaching that anyone can be labelled a terrorist. Especially if we elect another government that basically says anyone that disagrees with this government is a terrorist. That's what Adam Brooks doesn't understand. It's not about saying we want to be lenient for actual terrorists. It's saying we need to protect ordinary people from government overreach who could, on any given day, be a terror suspect because the government decides that they suddenly are, and then they're just kept in prison for 2 weeks. But of course, he doesn't think like that because he can't see outside of his own stupid right-wing bubble. And what I find so hypocritical from people like Adam Brooks is they're always whinging about taxpayers' money being spent on this and that. There's too many people on benefits. Why should my taxes go on these people? Well, he's arguing that we should keep people in custody for 2 weeks, feed them, wash them, and whatever else it costs to upkeep this particular program. He's arguing in favor of that. I thought he'd be like, actually, no, I think letting people go after 4 days is good because that's less burden on the taxpayer. Suddenly how that principle is now out the window. And finally, this is what, again, Adam Brooks and many people in the mainstream media don't understand about the Green Party is that this isn't Green Party policy. This is a motion. Now, there's 220,000, I think 220,000 Green Party members. Anyone can propose a motion. It doesn't mean that, one, the majority of Green Party members agree with it, and two, it doesn't mean it's going to pass and become policy. But the way in which the media have been reporting on a democratic process is, oh, any random person that proposes a motion, that means that's endorsed by the Greens. So when Adam Brooks attacks Zach Polanski or the Green Party and says they're a bunch of nutters, he doesn't understand that this isn't Green Party policy. It's a motion that's proposed by maybe a handful of Green members, and that might not get passed. Now, if it does get passed, I think it's fair game to scrutinize it and scrutinize it in the media because that's Green Party policy, and I'm here happily defending the policy. But at the moment, it is basically just a handful of people saying, why don't we debate this motion? And that's it. So Adam Brooks is arguing in favor of anyone being locked up for 2 weeks with zero evidence against you, whilst also apparently decrying authoritarianism. And this motion basically says, it's nothing radical. It's literally saying we should go back to a law we had before Tony Blair, which many conservatives voted against, which is to say maybe the state shouldn't lock up people for more than 4 days if they have no evidence on you that you're a terrorist or that you've done something wrong. That makes complete sense to me. Now, of course, if you're locked up for 3 days and there's evidence on you, then maybe they can keep you longer, but that's a separate thing. I reiterate, it's not a good idea to say, I can nab anyone off the street for 2 weeks with zero evidence and just keep them there. And the funny thing is, Adam Brooks makes a video about this and how, again, crazy and crank the Greens are. I tell you what, if this happens to a right-wing person, they're locked up for 2 weeks with no evidence or charges against them, Adam Brooks will be on the TV saying, oh my God, this is another example of the communist regime of Keir Starmer. But he doesn't understand that he's literally arguing in favor of something like that. And that is dangerous. That's extreme. The idea that anyone can be deemed a terrorist and anyone can be locked up for 2 weeks with zero evidence, that is the extreme position. But that's Adam Brooks. He's a fucking moron. He has no idea about literally anything.